Hello and welcome to the Red Rooster Golf Podcast. Alongside company founder Kerry Moher, I am Brad Fritsch, former PGA Tour player, current, yet not really playing, Korn Ferry Tour member, and Red Rooster founding partner. Red Rooster Golf. Join us in waking up your golf glove game. You use it on every shot, and yet you don't think about it very often. Learn to manage your glove. Make sure it's there to help you, and change it when it's not. Red Rooster Golf. Wake up, shake up, step up, and give. Kerry, great to see you again, my man. How's everything?
Terrific. Fall golf, my favorite time of the year. Played, had a battle round of golf yesterday. It was like, probably high 30s,
Oh my
raining.
God, you're insane.
And got out there with my boy Sam Miller. Got to play the Rivermead Club yesterday. Saw a couple of other sad souls out there. JP Zubek was out there.
Oh yeah, JP,
And
we took him to Sawgrass that one
that's
year.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Saw him out there, another sicko. And I got the put the winter mittens in play. First time wearing those.
And
Just amazing. They're
awesome.
They've got it's like a furry inside. Just keep your hands super warm. They're bomb proof. You can put the hot pockets in, keep them warm, and water resistant. Amazing. Super happy with them. They even have the you can do the wipe the snot from your nose, with the just got the snot
Beautiful.
guard.
Hopefully they're self-cleaning too.
We've thought of everything.
Yeah. Well, it's not high 30s here in North Carolina. It's been pretty nice. We're looking at a pretty fabulous week here, actually. And so hopefully I get to get out with a few guys, Steve Cook and another guy that we've played with before by the end of the week. And I'll try to twist their arms. I'll show them the cockpit and see if they want to dabble in that. They have the glove compartment, but I'm going to make the hard sell.
Go for it.
Yeah. Well, on today's episode, we have a very special guest. He buried about a 12-foot putt on the 72nd hole in Evansville, Indiana at Victoria National Golf Club, the final event of the Korn Ferry Tour season. He buried that putt for par and got his PGA Tour card for next year. Roger Sloan, born in Calgary, Alberta, grew up in Merritt, BC, and now living in the States. But he's had a long career in pro golf. I think it started in 2010, if I remember correctly. We'll figure that part out. So 13 years already. This will be his fifth or sixth year on the PGA Tour coming up. Sixth, yeah. And I'm excited to see what he has to say about that tournament, his year where he won an event on the Korn Ferry Tour, and how he kind of transitioned from a disappointing year on the PGA Tour to the Korn Ferry Tour, resetting, trying to get his card back, and especially how he felt over that putt on 18 at Victoria National. I don't think I've had a putt before where it was make, miss, Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour. Mine was always, hey, finish 25th in this tournament, you're fine. So I want to hear what he has to say. He's had a kind of a long career in pro golf so far. I think he's 36 or 7 right now. So he's got a lot of years left. So let's talk to Roger Sloan, 2024 PGA Tour member. Roger, man, how's it going?
It's great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, you bet. So we'll start with the latest news. You got your PGA Tour card back a couple of weeks ago in Evansville, Indiana. How did you feel over that 12-foot putt on the 72nd hole that, in your mind, probably may or may not have promoted you to the PGA Tour?
I would say complete calmness.
Yeah.
I knew I had to make it. In the middle of the fairway, I had no idea where I stood. It took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to do because I figured I needed to make birdie to get in. I thought I was actually on the outside, and it was just a sticky number. I'm like, man, 7-iron just puts me on the green, but puts me 30, 40 feet away. I need to have a little bit better look than that. So I got to hit a 6-iron, but a 6-iron brings, just long into play. And if it goes long, it goes in the water. Brad, you've obviously played that golf course. You know that sucker pin back there.
Yeah.
Have the experience back there. I've seen it played a lot. So I'm like, I got to hit a chippy 6. In the last minute, I bailed on it because I didn't want to hit it long. And then when I got up there, I looked at the projections and I was 30th. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I got to get it up and down. And I told my caddy in the middle of the fairway, I said, man, I really wish I knew where I stood, because if I knew par was good enough, I would just dump a 7-iron there in the front middle of the green and give myself that 30, 40-foot 2-putt.
So take the listeners back. When was the last time you looked at a scoreboard before the 18th green?
They did I mean, they didn't do a very good job of putting leaderboards out there considering what's on the line. I think it was probably 15 fairway.
Okay.
And I didn't see where I stood at all. Like I didn't know. I didn't have any idea. I had no idea. I knew that if I was, and at the time I was at 7 under, I had a feeling that I was probably good at 7 under, but then I 3-putted 16. And I'm like, I don't know where that put me in the tournament, cause like, but, yeah, it was, it's, you've also played that golf course. Those aren't really the closing holes you want to have your PGA Tour card on the line.
No, so Kerry hasn't played there to my knowledge. I've played a few events there, and I could just describe it as PGA West Stadium course on steroids. Like it's a new and improved version of it, the closing holes, where you can't just hit a hybrid off the tee like you can at PGA West nowadays. It's a little bit shorter by modern standards. Victoria
Yeah.
National, 15, you've got to drive it in a thimble,
Yeah.
and then you're hitting downhill over water to a par 5 green. 16, if they play it at the back, it's the hardest par 3 I think I've ever played. There's water basically off the left fringe, water front right, very small green. 17's a little bit of a reprieve, but it's still a good hole, dogleg right with water down the right. And then 18, I think anyone who's watched Korn Ferry Tour events has got that dramatic downhill tee shot, water right.
Yeah.
Over the years, we've seen a couple of questionable drops.
Yes.
Ball, where did it cross last? And guys' lives are on the line, basically, or at least their future is on the line. And so they want to get every advantage that they can, I guess you could say. So all that to say, yes, those are the holes you don't want to play with your livelihood on the line for the next year. But you did it, man, and that's awesome because you've been the tweener, right? You've been Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour, back and forth, and you've had some really nice years on the PGA Tour. What did this year entail before you won in Utah in August? What was your outlook on the year, let's say in July, as you were moving through the Korn Ferry Tour season?
I think there's a couple key things for my year this year. I'd spent the previous 4 years on the PGA Tour. You kind of get used to the privileges of that tour. And then you come down to the Korn Ferry Tour, and it is a night and day difference between the two tours. And I've seen a lot of guys come down and they just have miserable attitudes. It's constant complaints about how bad the tour is in comparison. So I took an early stance that, this is where I'm playing and I need to accept it. I didn't play very well last year and I earned a spot on the Korn Ferry Tour. Korn Ferry Tour is an interesting place because there's a lot of guys that are like, "Oh, I hate being down here," and there's a lot of young guys that are like, "Are you kidding me? This is awesome being out here."
Yeah, first time. It's the highest they've ever played, right? For a
Exactly.
lot of the
So a
guys.
lot of those guys tend to play really well because their attitude, their outlook on it. And so for me, it was, you know what? I'm not going to do the locker rooms. I'm not going to do the player dining. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to play golf every single day. I don't care about anything other than the golf course that I'm playing that particular day.
Interesting.
And that's a change, Roger, from the
That's a little bit of a change. I'll probably actually continue to do that a little bit more. But you obviously, Brad, you know the experience out on the Korn Ferry Tour, especially to start the year. There's so many tournaments out there that don't have locker rooms, so it was just kind of more like routine to just use the back of your trunk or whatever is, that's where you put your shoes on and stuff like that. So I just kind of committed to that. I would walk into player dining every once in a while and have a meal, but for the breakfasts, but for the most part, I was having lunches elsewhere, and I just I didn't want to put myself in a situation where I was always in that or had that temptation to compare. What really mattered was I just show up. I think the second part was that I played so poorly last year on the PGA Tour that this year was a little bit of a wake up. I would say it was, just a recommitment year, just rebuilding all of the blocks that made me successful in years past. Probably got a little bit, um, just a little bit lackadaisical in my intentionality when it came to practicing. And there's a lot of factors that contribute to that. Sometimes it's a little bit of laziness. The golf game's in a good place. Obviously, I have a growing family, so it's very easy to take my attention away from what I need to do, apply it to the family. Um, it's just so this year it was just kind of like recommit ourselves. What is our identity? What are the things that I need to work on to get myself to be the best that I can be? And the biggest thing for me was going forward on the Korn Ferry schedule was I wanted to play well the second half of the year. So I knew that if I committed myself early on, there was going to be a lot of growing pains. I actually saw signs of some really good success early on. I didn't have immediate results, but I had a lot of good rounds. I was making a lot of birdies. A lot of stats were starting to improve. Um, and so that gave me encouragement that we were on the right path. And so I just knew if I stayed committed to that, the second half was going to start to kind of have some favorable outcomes. And, we end up in Utah, and out of nowhere, I just decided to make a mitt full of birdies and eagles that week. And, I got a little hardware for that, and it kind of changed the course of our year, and we had a lot of it, and I just had a lot more confidence, and I could kind of rely on that going forward.
So the last couple of events on the Korn Ferry Tour are playoff events, and I believe they kind of cut down the fields, do they not?
That's a kind of a touchy subject. There's no like hard. The last one is the only one that has a hard number, being 75.
So
All of the
okay,
other ones are full fields. Like, so the first one was 156 guys, but it's the 156 guys that commit. So there was guys that were like 168th on the points list getting into that event, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I mean, it's obviously the first year, and they're not going to get it right. But you go to Boise and you have 156 guys, and the last guy in the field really essentially only had to make one cut all year. It doesn't put a lot of, it just doesn't reward the regular season for the guys that are playing well. That somebody can just make one cut and then they have the opportunity to play for elevated purse, more points. So I hope that they can make some changes in that, because you got to reward the guy. I would like to see a firm um, field size too, because it adds to a little bit more drama over those 4 weeks. There was none of that drama, because a guy was sitting there at 144 in Boise. He's clearly safe because 155 guys got into the 144 man field the next week. So the field sizes were just a little bit too large, I felt.
so you start the playoffs in Boise, is that correct?
Boise, 156 guys. Then it
Okay,
went to
so that's a
Nashville.
golf course. That's a golf course that it's very old. It's got some par fives you can reach, very narrow fairways, but it's a scoring fest,
They have
right?
par fives on that golf course?
And then you go to Nashville, the Grove, which I was actually there for a day, doing the pro-am glove fitting for the Tennessee Golf Association, and that golf course looked amazing. Tell us about the Grove in Tennessee.
The Grove is a cool little community. Relatively new, I guess. Golf course was solid. It's Bermuda. It's at the time of year where the greens start to go into dormancy. I was really impressed that week because you had to think around the golf course a little bit. The Korn Ferry Tour is, it's funny that prepare. There's this term they use. It prepares you for the PGA Tour. That tour does not prepare you for the PGA Tour. It is, it's just it's a vessel, right? That 30 guys now graduate from. The golf courses you get 142 yards, you hit it 142 yards at the flagstick. The Grove, all of a sudden you start having to go, whoa, these greens are a little bit firm. I got 142. Where do I got to land this? Because we got some ridges, and they started putting some pins and in some places that you had to just think about a little bit more. It's a good golf course with the sense that you got to drive the ball well there. Good par threes. That's what I was really impressed with. There was just solid par threes. Yeah, really, really good event, honestly.
And then you move to Columbus, which is my absolute nemesis golf course. If I ever broke par there, I don't remember. The Scarlet Course, Jack Nicklaus design. Um, all of a sudden, you're playing golf courses that do prepare you for the PGA Tour the next 3 weeks, right? So it's kind of a different change. I wonder if that kind of, I don't know how to say it, that fact kind of affects the way that guys play. Like all of a sudden, you're moving from Birdie Fest minus 25 wins. You want to think at 23 under in Utah. All of a sudden, 10 under in Columbus is amazing, I think. And I don't know the winning score, but gosh, it's such a different venue than a typical Korn Ferry Tour course.
I think it was nice this year. So the last several years, the Columbus event has been about 3 to 4 weeks earlier in the schedule. And so they're still in that summer heat. They're still getting a decent amount of rain. And so I've seen 16, 17, 18 under win that tournament recently. And from when I first was out there, and obviously when you were out there, it was a mid-September event that the ground gets so firm, those greens are so undulated, and you just have to play a completely different style of golf. I would say that it's probably just as demanding as anything I've ever played on the PGA Tour.
Wow.
And it's not overly long. I wouldn't say that it's a long golf course. You can get to all the par fives in two. There's nothing out there that I'm like, wow, that's super long. You just have to think your way around that golf course. And it's one of those golf courses that if you don't make that birdie on the par five, you press on the next hole and you try to get aggressive, and those bunkers are so deep. I mean, you miss greens out there. It's very difficult to get up and down. I was really looking forward to that event because I knew that the guys playing, and it was a unique situation this year because nobody from the PGA Tour is coming down into those fields.
Right.
So most of the guys playing in Columbus, that was the first time they'd seen that golf course. That was the first time that they were going to experience golf like that. So that really helped me. I just knew that I just needed to play extremely patient. I just needed to pick apart that golf course, just hit it in the middle of the greens, hit your two putts, and carry on. And I didn't have a very good, I had probably had my C game that week. And to your point, Brad, like I've never finished under par there. I haven't even come close. And then this year, I was honestly able to manage myself around there so well and shoot one under par for the week. Finished 18th, but it was just a testament to like I just played that golf course way more patiently and conservative than anybody else did. And take your bogeys. You're gonna miss a green. Take your bogey. Don't try to get it up and down and bring double into play. You're gonna hit it close every once in a while or make a putt. So that was really that I knew that if I just played that style of golf that week, that was going to give me a decent amount of points, set me up for a chance at the Tour Championship.
Yeah, Kerry, go ahead. I've been hogging the questions for Roger.
I've played the Scarlet course. I mean, I think it's actually an original Mackenzie design, and then Nicholas, because he's a Buckeye grad. I know he's made some changes out there, and then I think they've tried to go back. So there's been these ebbs and flows, but yeah, I found it like impossible. I played it with a Buckeye grad, and I played the back tees, and it just just ate my lunch. It's all angles, and the bunkers are crazy, and the greens are fast and super undulating. But it's interesting, Roger, because like I've been following you for years, and I always see this like you seem to have this incredible. It's interesting to hear you talk about how you had to pick apart that Scarlet course, and then to see you just like go off in Utah and just, whatever you kind of got going there, and you took it so deep. It was crazy. So, and that's been kind of my experience getting to caddy with Brad a few times, getting to see the the course management and how important that is on a PGA Tour sort of caliber layout versus, let's say that Utah's maybe that's more of a stock kind of Korn Ferry where you gotta. So how do you free yourself up, and also like talk us through the week in Utah, like you obviously had this game plan. I heard you talk about that mindset coming into this year where you were able to, you've been back and forth enough times where maybe if it was your first time down, you're kicking and screaming a little bit, and maybe you'd learned a little bit about that, and it was interesting to hear about staying out of the clubhouses and just staying focused. But what happened in Utah that week? Like, when did you realize, like, maybe that your game was there in a sort of special way, and know to kind of like, sort of chase that finish? And how do you free that up when so many weeks you are playing so conservative, because that's what's rewarded?
Uh, Utah was an interesting week. There was a lot. There was just before the week started. I remember, you're on Instagram and I'm watching some clips, and Scott Fawcett did a clip. He was on some podcast. For those aren't familiar with Scott Fawcett, he does the Decade Golf, and I've done a seminar with Scott. He, I'm not 100% sold on his Decade Golf, but what Scott does better than anybody else is it's analyze data. He is really good with numbers. Anyways, on this podcast, he goes, on the PGA Tour, when you go from 5 feet to 8 feet, you lose half a stroke gained, which is significant. He's like, and then from 8 feet, do you know how far you have to go to lose another half a stroke? He said it's another 23 feet, so it's 31 feet. So it's essentially what he's saying is the statistics say that there's no difference between hitting it from 10 feet. There's essentially no difference from hitting it 10 feet or 30 feet. And it's like, whoa, are you kidding me? Like, how many times do I have a 6-iron? And it's like, I got to hit this as close as possible, right? And it's really unique because the Utah event, it's a birdie fest. There's a lot of short holes, a lot of wedges. You can get to all the par fives very easily in two. You're just going to make a lot of birdies and a lot of eagles. And how many people would go into that week being like, I got to fire at the flagstick? And for me, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to commit to this. And literally on all the par threes, I just hit it into the middle of the green. And the par fives, when I'm hitting it into, I mean, I even have an 8-iron in one of them, and I just hit it into the middle of the green. And I ended up pulling it just a little bit and hit it to 8 feet and drained the 8-footer for eagle. But
That's honest.
it happens, right? Like, I literally hit it into the middle of the green, and I was just trying to get the ball in play off the tee to give myself a chance to. And obviously, you can be a little bit more aggressive when you have a 120-yard wedge shot. And I chipped the ball. I can't remember exactly what it was, but over a 4-day stretch, I only chipped the ball 5 times. I mean, that's unheard of. Like,
That's awesome.
I mean,
Yep.
it was just, and it was a testament to the fact of, like, it didn't really matter where the pin was. The pin just gave me an idea of how far I needed to hit it. And then it was okay. I just hit it in the middle of the green. The greens out there were small enough that you're essentially going to 2-putt from the middle of the green. And then on the shorter holes, when you hit a good drive down there and you could be aggressive to the pins, and my wedge play is one of the strongest parts of my game. So that's a golf course that I don't need to push the golf ball up near the greens where some of those guys really just, they hit it down there. I'm going to hit it out there and have my 85-yard wedge shot, and I'm going to stick it to these guys. So it was just a weird week that I listened to that podcast. It was kind of like an epiphany moment. And then on a golf course that would suggest that you have to be more aggressive, I actually played more conservative than anybody else. And I made a mitt full of birdies. It was really cool to experience that and just kind of like piece all of it together. That's essentially kind of bringing my identity full circle, and I'm a lot more confident in how I play, how I approach. I'm going to do things my way. It's going to, I'm just excited to continue that growth now as I, further my career.
Yeah, it's interesting, Roger. I've done a couple of talks with college golf teams and with some, high level amateurs around here in North Carolina. And I just tell them that when I was playing my best, my mantra was chances, not chipping. So it's not like, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to hit a wedge to 6 feet. It doesn't happen that way. You don't do it on purpose every time. Like the average, pitching wedge on tour is probably 21 or 22 feet. So the chances of you hitting it to 6 or 8 feet is pretty low. But if you give yourself 18 times from 20 feet, you'll probably make about 3 or 4 of them. And of course, you have par fives where you can get it up and down for birdie. I guess my point is you can't force a low score. You have to create opportunity for it, but it's not like you can go and, wedge from 85 yards. Like you said, you're not going to wedge that inside, 100% make every single time. That's 100% make is what, 3, 4, 5 feet. Um, you're not going to do that. But if you give yourself opportunities for 18 holes and 72 holes, uh, and you'll pull an 8 iron by accident to 8 feet and make it, uh, over 72 holes, that gives you a really good chance to score. But I bet you that the guys who didn't play as well as you probably missed 1 or 2 greens by being too aggressive, going for the short side instead of the center, fat side of the green, whatever that may be. Um, that's great. Like you took a low scoring course and kind of you brought it to its knees by doing almost the exact opposite of what most of the other guys were doing, which is kind of cool. And it's kind of cool too that you recognize, like, hey, that's might be who I am going forward. You may have known that before, but there's nothing like a win to tell you that you're good enough and you can win anywhere. Unlike in Colombia, I have to bring this up, where anyone can win. Um, I have to tell the story, Kerry.
Yes, please
Please.
do. Please do.
So it's 2016. Roger and his wife and I were sitting in Mexico, in Leon, Mexico clubhouse. It was, we had a week off between events. So this is 2 weeks after I won in Colombia. And the event in Cartagena, Colombia, the wind blows 40 miles an hour every day, all day. It's insane. And Roger and I were just talking back and forth about how good the golf course was in Leon, in Mexico. Like, you had to strike it well, you had to play so well to shoot a good score. And out of his mouth comes, yeah, anyone can win in Colombia. Like, that's kind of just a toss up. But, and his wife kind of hits him on the knee. And I'm like, dude, he's like, oh, no, 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 no. I didn't mean it that way. So good. I've waited 7 years for this. This is amazing.
We're holding on to something, aren't we?
Yes, yes, I have. No, no, but that's super cool that you kind of took that mindset and brought it to a course where normally most guys would just say, "All right, flag hunting all day, every day." Um, how would you apply that? The PGA Tour, the golf courses are so much more difficult, but there are some weeks where you need to go low. I think of, Hawaii, you have to go low. John Deere, courses like that. Will you maintain the same type of attitude at those golf courses as
Yeah,
well?
because I don't think it's you have to go low. I think those golf courses just um, they yield themselves to a lot of birdies, right? They're soft around the edges. There's forgiveness. Just what you're hitting, what it allows you to hit off the tee allows a lot of opportunities for birdies. Those greens too, you can make a lot of putts on those greens out there in Honolulu. Same thing with Palm Springs, right? Like, wow, I got to make a lot of birdies. It's like, no, no, no. Those golf courses yield a lot of birdies. You just play the par fives under par out there, you're going to be in the top 10. Like, or if you birdie every par five, sorry, which you can get to every single par five that you play that weekend too. So the golf, my mentality is the golf course yields those lower scores. You don't have to go out there and do anything. I think the trick to golf is you have to eliminate bogeys. Scott Fawcett said it great. He was like, when you look at Tiger from, I think it was 2000 to 2001. In 2000, his stroke average was whatever it was, 68.5 with a whatever birdie average. In 2001, his birdie average went down, but his scoring average also went down. I was like, well, how does that happen? It was because he figured it out. You make less bogeys, you win more golf tournaments,
Yeah,
right?
if you look at the stats, I wouldn't imagine that the top 100 guys have anything more than 1 or 1.2 birdies between them, right? Number 1 and number 100. They probably average between 3,
You
3.9 and
everybody makes birdies.
5.1 birdies. Yeah, everyone makes birdies. It's who can make the least number of bogeys. How do you achieve that?
So for
You're
me
absolutely
going
right.
forward, to answer your question, it's like I'm not too concerned about the birdies. The golf courses yield the birdies. It's managing you look at it, like when you really look at when do you make bogeys? It's usually when you're trying to force something. It's when you got a sticky number and you're not going to make too many bogeys um, with a stock driving range 7-iron. It just doesn't happen. You're going to hit it fairly decent, right? What happens is, I'm in between. Maybe I'm going to gas this a little bit, and then you don't hit it really well, or I'm going to take some off of this, and I didn't hit it really well. And it's like, you know what? Why don't you hit that flush 7-iron to 40 feet and two putt?
Yep.
You don't, and that's essentially what I'm starting to build towards. And and it's piecing it all together. I'm a little bit slower learner than some people, but playing practice round with Steve Stricker. This was years ago at the Honda. Honda's got great par threes, and he goes, and he's asking me how I'm going to hit a few shots in and around the greens, and I'm asking him a few things like how he's going to play the par threes out there, and he goes, Raj, in my entire career, I have aimed for the middle of the green on every single par three. My philosophy is I'm going to hit it close on one of them, and I'm going to make a putt on another one. And it's great for, he's obviously a tremendous putter, but I mean, just the freedom you have in that you can step up with a 5-iron and you're not worried about hitting it close or trying to make birdie. It's just, no, I'm going to hit it into the middle of the green. And anybody that's played at a high level understands that, sometimes your brain is just drawn towards the flagstick. So even though you're aimed in the middle of the green, you just happen to err towards the flag. Like, you're going to hit it close every once in a while. You're going to mishit it towards the flagstick. What you really have to guard yourself against is being aggressive to the flagstick and then hitting it into an area that you brings bogey and double bogey into play. So I haven't perfected it. Golf cannot be perfected, but what you can do is you can give yourself the best chance for success. And by eliminating as many big numbers and bogeys as possible, I think that's going to give us a pretty good chance to have success this next few years.
So your next couple of months entails what? Like, this is the first time in many years that you wouldn't be in, the Safeway in California or Mississippi or whatever the fall events are. You don't have a fall season, right?
No. Like last year, I didn't have a fall season because I lost my card, but you're chasing the last half of the PGA Tour year, putting so much pressure on yourself, chasing results. Then you go into those finals events on the Korn Ferry Tour to try to get your card back. And as soon as that was done, it was just like I went into hibernation. It was just, wow, I don't even want to touch a club for a while. Whereas now, there's been a decent amount of gaps in the schedule on the Korn Ferry Tour, to where I don't feel like I need to get away from it. Like I played last week, I'll play this week a little bit. So I'm looking forward to a couple months of an actual off season where we can put some work into the game. We can be intentional about what we're doing, both off the course and on the course. Give ourselves the best chance that when we come to Hawaii, we're that much better than we were this year.
Roger, why don't you take us back through, like, coming up, I know you went to UTEP, and talk us through, like, when did you kind of, I think you got your start on the PGA Tour Canada. When did you kind of know, like, hey, I think, was it in college where you were like, hey, I'm playing against some guys who have got their cards and I feel like I can make a go of it? Was it like, I don't know, I'm going to give it a shot? At what point did you realize, like, I can compete, this is something I could do for a living, I can make it to the PGA Tour?
I think since a very young age, I've always had a very strong belief in that I can do whatever I put my mind to. So, from an early age, I played hockey and I was a great hockey player. And I had dreams of Stanley Cups and gold medals. And there's no doubt in my mind that if I'd continued that path, I'd be there. You have to obviously be realistic too. Like, I'm not 6'8". I'm not going to go into the NBA and say I'm going to be the next NBA superstar. But, given what I have, like, that was a realistic goal to get to the NHL and do that. And for some reason, when I was 16, I was 6'2" and 140 pounds, and you're about to go to some of these junior camps at 16, and you're going to get sent through the third row by some 20-year-old, right? Like I was a Chesson Hadley out there, just
Yeah.
waiting to get derailed. I hadn't filled out yet. So that's, I think, one of the reasons that I chose golf. And among other reasons, I really loved golf. Um, I loved the challenge of it. I loved the independence of it. If you shot 67, you got the accolades. If you shot 79, well, you didn't have anybody to bail you out. You're out there all on your own. I had a terrible amateur career, terrible college career. It wasn't very good, but I had obviously a strong self-belief. I knew what my potential was. When I graduated college, I knew I wanted to give myself a chance to play professionally. Not knowing really what that entailed, I started working with my current swing coach. We developed, I was raw. I never really worked with anybody. I had a head pro at my local 9-hole golf course. Gives you the basics, right? Here's your grip, here's your stance, and he gave me the freedom and flexibility. He knew I was the type of guy that just needed to go out on the golf course and self-discover, and that's how I learned how to score. That's how I learned how to hit shots and how to go low and how to make lots of birdies and how to make $3 to afford the hot dog at the turn. When I turned pro, I was unsuccessful at my first attempt at Q school for PGA Tour Canada.
Okay.
And I tried to do a few Monday qualifiers for it, unsuccessful, blowing through some cash. I Monday qualified for the last event that I had kind of budgeted for. It was in Saskatoon, and missed the cut, but I got some valuable experience. I went back for the next 2 months and kind of practiced and prepared myself for the fall Q school. And I remember I eagled the last hole to get the very last card.
Wow.
Wow.
And my dad was caddying for me, so it was kind of a cool experience. We start the next year, and I was at Uplands. That's what it was. It was in Uplands, the Times Colonist in Victoria, and it was the final round. It was raining, and I shot a course record 61. I holed out from the fairway twice. Um,
You can't
and
chart that, can you?
and it was great. So I'd been working on some wedge numbers. I'd been working in 5-yard increments, a 95, a 90, and an 85-yard shot. And the first one I needed to land at 95, boom, in the hole. And then the next one I needed to land at 85, boom, in the hole. So it was immediate, like, wow, you worked on these shots and they went in. I mean, but I finished fourth that week, and I shot 61. And I was always really, I had the potential, and I could shoot 2-3 under. I could make 7 or 8 birdies in a round, but I would also have a ton of others. And I would shoot 69. I would shoot 70. So there was so much potential there. And that was really the first time in a tournament round I shot less than 66, and it was 61. And it was like, it takes a special golfer to get that far under par and close out the round. And I was able to do it. So I was able, like, okay, I have it. Like, I know I have it. So just keep on keeping on. That was in my first year on the Canadian tour. Didn't really play well the rest of the year. Yeah, that one was like, whoa, okay. The things that me and my coach are working on, I mean, this is great. I went out the next year, my second year, I won very early on. I got an I was top 3, got the exemption to the Canadian Open. So now my second year as a pro, I'm playing my first PGA Tour event. And when I was out there, I was just like, you just had this, like, I was deer in headlights. I got absolutely creamed by Shaughnessy. Like, it tore me up. But
Yeah.
looking around, there was that calmness. It was like, yep, I know it. I'm going to be out here. And it was just a commitment to the process. Just stay committed, keep going. In 2015, we were a rookie on the PGA Tour. So, kind
So
of
I
cool.
remember Roger playing the same event in Kamloops, British Columbia, the one that you won on the Canadian Tour that year. I think it was 2011.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
And I had my crew of guys. You probably remember them, and we didn't know who you were. And I think you led pretty much wire to wire, very close. I don't think you snuck up on the leaderboard on Saturday or Sunday. I think you were
No, I
ahead the whole
was
time.
had the whole
Yeah.
thing.
And we're like, who is this guy? What's going on? We've never heard of him. And my group of friends, like, we had been out there for a while, so we pretty much knew of everybody. And the flowing locks of this guy Roger Sloan were on full display, and I think he won by 3, which at that golf course there wasn't much to separate guys out there, so winning by 3 was pretty darn good.
Yeah, over Stewie.
Stu Anderson, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Um, you won, which had to be incredibly difficult, a Web.com tour event in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You won in a playoff, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
At Ashburn in just outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel? Because you hadn't played on the PGA Tour yet,
Nope.
but you're in front of Canadians trying to win and most likely secure your card and go to the PGA Tour the next year. How did that? How would you compare that? How you felt that day versus a couple weeks ago in Indiana?
Uh, it's vastly different. Again, I've just incremental steps in my career, and looking back at it, I had the hottest putter ever when I was in Nova Scotia and won. I mean, I was making everything, and
That's a great feeling.
oh, it was. I mean, I was putting into a bathtub. It was
Oh,
unbelievable. It was incredible. That year was actually a unique year because the Saturday was canceled because of the hurricane that went through.
Hmm.
And so it was actually, I loved it because it was like you play 2 days, and then you get a day off, and then you go play 36 and finish the golf tournament. I loved it. It was great. Um, it was, I just wasn't prepared back then. It kind of, it snuck up on me a little bit. I didn't at the time think I was good enough to win on that tour. And I beat Derek Fathauer in a playoff, and it was like, boom, just immediately vaulted me up to like 10 or 11 on the money list at the time. And I played horribly for the remainder of the year because a PGA Tour card is literally just like dangling in front of your head. It was like, gosh, if you make like $8,000 more dollars or $10,000 more dollars, like it's secure. So the rest of the year, I just finished 65th every time because I put so much pressure on myself
Yeah.
to do it that particular week. And I went into the Portland event 20, what was I, 23rd on the money list. And I was like, man, okay, you make the cut, just put up a little bit of money, you'll be good. I missed the cut. And that was the longest 48 hours of my life because you're sitting there with the hopes of getting to the PGA Tour, and you go from 23rd to 29 to 27 to 26 down to 28. And then just as things kind of transpired on Sunday, I end up finishing 24th. Those projections are always so difficult because as the week goes on, the field separates a little bit, right? There's not as many people tied for 6th or as many people tied for 12th as there is on Friday or Saturday. And so as the separation goes, the points distribute differently. But we finished 24th and got out on the PGA Tour. And you compare that to now where I was in Indiana going in as 31, and it's night and day different. I know what I need to do. I know what I need to take care of. I know how things are going to shake themselves out during the week. I know that I just got to take care of my own business and just go commit to being methodical of how I approach the golf course. I didn't have my best stuff, but shoot, we finished top 10, and that was just a testament to a lot of different aspects that I'm very thankful for, but vastly different than where I was in 2015.
Yeah, I have an aunt who early on in my career, missed a cut, played, finished 50th, missed a cut. She said, "Man, it's all mileage. Like it's all mileage on the tire. You'll learn." And it sounds like that you have learned quite a bit over your career. Shoot, well, we're talking about 2014 Nova Scotia. That's 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So you've probably played what 180 to 200 tournaments since then,
Yeah.
and that was always my goal, was to kind of break it down into what will I learn about myself in the next 50 events that I can apply to the next 50 after that. Like it's just like you said, the game can't be perfected.
And
um,
it's not always like consciously, you're not always consciously aware of what you're learning too, right? A lot of it is subconsciously. Um, So it's not like you can sit there and write down everything. This is what I learned in the 50 events. You can do
right.
a little bit of that, but it's constant growth, just like being a dad or just like, being an accountant or whatever it is. It's just you get more used to that routine or that, whatever you're doing.
I wanted to throw out probably, I don't know if it would be the highlight of your PGA Tour career, but it had the potential to be the best golf day of your life, was the 2021 Wyndham Championship. You were in a playoff
Yeah.
at Sedgefield, where I've had some great memories there. 6-man playoff. And I want to read the names out of those who were in the playoff: Brendan Grace, Siwoo Kim, Kevin Kisner, Kevin Na, Adam Scott.
Yeah. And
Like
then
that,
just like you and all your homeboys in Kamloops, who's that
that
Roger Sloan
that
guy?
that is a hammer time of PGA Tour players. Lots of wins,
Yep.
a major. Um, Kisner is the ultimate bulldog. How'd you feel on that? How'd you feel on that tee in the playoff?
I was as calm as I've ever been. I was as loose as a goose. And it was funny because I'm looking at these other guys. I mean, they're fidgety. Like Kevin Na was fidgety as I've ever seen. And I
Well,
played with him the whole day.
he fidgets in his sleep, though. That's the thing.
But it had, he was just, and everybody was quiet and uptight. And you saw it on the first playoff hole. I mean, it was just me and Adam Scott were the only guys that hit the green in regulation. Everybody else was boom. Like it was, and we all had hit the fairway. It was insane. But to start that week, I think I was 131st, 133rd going into the FedEx Cup play or with the FedEx Cup standing. So I needed a whatever it was solo 19th to lock my tour card up. And that's a lot of pressure. And I was 3 over through 11 holes on Thursday.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, I guess I'm in the 126 to 150 category. I'll still get a handful of starts. And I just kind of like let loose a little bit. And I made a couple birdies coming in, finished at 1 over. I finished on 9. This is a funny story. Hole 9, I play that hole quite aggressively. I hit driver off the tee there just to get it up over that bunker.
Mm-hmm.
There's that road that goes up the right that's out of bounds. Well, I'd gotten a couple birdies. I'm at 1 over. I'm feeling pretty good. And I chicken wing a driver way to the right. And it's cruising over there. And I'm like, oh my goodness. It's out of bounds, right? Like it landed 20 yards out of bounds. And you hear this big clunk. We go up there. Somebody had parked a maintenance cart on the road. Okay. And it hits in the bed of the maintenance cart and bounces back onto the golf course. I wedge it. I have nothing because there's trees over there. I wedge it 50 yards up the hill. I have about 100 yards, and I hit the 100-yard wedge shot to about 8 inches and tap in for par.
Crazy. This is the Thursday round.
This is the Thursday round. I then go in and I shoot 6 under on Friday. I shoot 6 under on Saturday, and I shoot 4 under on Sunday, and I get myself into the playoff. And it wasn't as easy as that. I don't really remember a whole lot about the Friday and Saturday. I just remember I had it going. And on Sunday, I'm T4 going into it, going, okay, I just anything under par today, and I lock my card up. My only objective, and if you remember, Russell Henley was like 5 or 6 strokes ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
So It wasn't really like I was in a position to win. I think everybody thought Russell was just going to walk away with it. Well, I remember sitting on the the 14th tee box. We had to wait for a ruling on the tee box, and there's a massive scoreboard sitting right there, and I'm not looking at any scoreboards throughout the day. And I happened to see that Nick Taylor shot whatever it was 4 or 5 under at the time, and he's T13, okay, and he would have been 10 under par, and I'm 12 under par at the time. And I'm like, oh man, there's obviously a bunch of guys at T13. So I'm like, if I make 2 bogeys, I don't keep my card. Okay. And I didn't know this at the time, but if I make 2 birdies, I'm tied for the lead.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, the magnitude of that is so heavy that it's like, I can't even process this right now. So it basically simplifies everything. There is only one thing that I can do, and it's feel the shot that I'm about to hit. And I hit a great drive. They've lengthened that 14th hole now to where it's a driver, and I hit a 4-iron in there really, really nicely. I end up birdieing 16. They put the pin in that bowl, and I ended up making a nice putt. I hit an 8-iron into 17 to about 3 feet, and I drained that. And all of a sudden, Kisner's not talking to me anymore. Kisner was great because he knew what was on the line. Every single time I made a putt the whole day, he was like, good putt, good putt. Those greens are so fast out there that you hit
Yeah.
a good putt, it's going to go 4 feet past. And so I'm draining 4-footers all the time. And he was very like encouraging, good putt, like going out of his way, right? Because he knew it was on the line. And then all of a sudden on 17, and so for me, I had no idea where I stood. And I'm literally on 18T going, okay, I can make a triple bogey right now and I'm good.
Isn't that the golfer way to think about it?
It's such a golfer way to
Like,
think about
what
it.
is the worst possible scenario and I'm still okay?
So yeah, so on 18, earlier in the week, I had driven it left. I play a fade, so I aim right down that tree line, and I faded into the middle of the fairway. I over faded a little bit into the first cut of the right rough, but at that moment, it was just like, whew, I got my tour card locked up. So I hit a 6-iron onto the green, and I'm reading this putt. I got like 80 feet, and pins in the back left. I'm just on the front right of the green, and I'm walking back to my ball, and I see the scoreboard, and it says Kevin Na minus 14 T1. I'm like, huh. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm minus 14. Holy smokes, I'm T1 right now. I have no freaking idea.
That's
Okay, well,
great.
you better two putt this, right? So I end up two putting. We get in that 6-man playoff. But the playoff to me was kind of like whipped cream. It was like I had accomplished my goal for that day, and I probably wasn't in a point where it was like, hey, it would be different now. But at that time, it was I accomplished my goal, and now let's go have some fun with it. And I did. I was as loose as anybody in that playoff. I gave myself 2 chances to make birdie on both the playoff holes. So I was impressed with how I handled it, and put it in the bank because that situation is gonna come some other time.
Yeah, 100%. That had to be, and you're not playing like the easiest hole in the world either in that playoff, right? 18 is one of the hardest par fours, I'd say. One of the hardest closing holes, I think, on the PGA
It's
Tour.
not if you're Adam Scott and you hit driver to the bottom of the hole and hit a pitching wedge in there.
Yeah, I was never able to hit that down to the
I'm
bottom. I usually,
slaying a 6-iron in there, and he's ripping a pitching wedge to 4 feet. I'm like, man, that must be nice.
I was usually a 5 or 6 iron, 6 or 7 iron
Yeah,
guy off the
that's about what
downslope,
it is. Yeah.
to the elevated green. But yeah, to be in
So
that
we
spot,
were
you
in the
just
6-man playoff, and I guess Russell Henley had a chance to make it a 7. If it was 7, we were going to go in 2 groups. But when Russell didn't get into the playoff because he 3-putted, it was a 6 of us, and so we decided to go in one group. And you don't see it because you're kind of obviously you're down the hill for your second shots, but we're down there, and it's mayhem. Okay, nobody knows who's away. You got caddies yelling at each other, 172, 156, 161, and it's like, okay, it's my turn. Like, and it's just mayhem. And I don't know what was obviously shown on TV at the time. And it looks like there's order, but it was absolute chaos in the fairway because we had all driven it relatively similar, other than Adam Scott, who drove it way down to the bottom of the hill. We were all in like a 5-yard window, and it's just pointing, and well, this guy's hitting, so we got to be quiet. And it was crazy. And then that first playoff hole, the fact that all those guys missed them in the location that they did and they all made par is one of the most remarkable things I have ever seen. Like Siwoo Kim's up and down from that back left area has to be one of the greatest up and downs I've ever seen. Like it was just utterly insane. Kevin Na chipping it to 20 feet and draining the 20-footer. And it was insane. These up and downs out of nowhere. And everybody thought they were done because Adam Scott hit it so close, but
right. What a memory, though, right? And you get to play it again next year, presumably. And
yeah.
I loved going back to courses where I'd played well. The memories are just they're so overwhelmingly positive when you
Yeah.
can just say, "Well, I've done this, 4 or 5 times. Just hit it out there,"
Yep.
and you know what the
You don't have to
ball's
think
gonna
about it.
do.
It's
Yeah.
almost like it's your second golf course, right? Where it's
Yes.
just like I don't think about it. I know how it plays. I have the feeling. I know where to miss. I got the soft spots.
Yeah, when you don't have to stick your head in your yardage book
Yep.
for an entire week at a golf course you know really well, that's a great feeling because they're half the field are like you said about Columbus, like playing it for the first time, still trying to learn it. So I imagine this will be your what, 4th or 5th year on the PGA Tour?
6th.
Sixth year.
Yep.
Awesome. Uh, I just have to imagine that that's such an advantage
Oh yeah.
as you move forward and keep going. I always heard about, well, the veterans know and the veteran caddies are an asset, which I never really thought that way, but the comfort level of the player playing on golf courses that you play each and every year is just such a huge, um, it's a huge advantage in my mind.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Um, yeah, there's a few that I definitely look forward to going back to because of success. Um,
What are they, Roger? What are some of the venues that you love?
um, Wailea is one of them. Palm Springs is another one. I love the Palm Springs events. I've always loved when Q School was there. The first time I went to Q School, I fell in love with those golf courses, and now that event happens to be on those golf courses. Um, I don't know. Palm Springs just is something where I really love that tournament. I don't traditionally like the pro am portion of it, but I think now that I've had a decent amount of success there, I'm used to it. Going through the schedule, yeah, Sedgefield's there. I've had a lot of success at the 3M, so Minnesota's another one. Detroit, I really like Detroit. Um,
Is that your other second place was Minneapolis?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was
Um,
trying to figure that out today. I knew you lost in the playoff at Wyndham. Minneapolis was your other second
oh
place.
no, sorry, my other second was Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Puerto Rico. I've had a couple top tens at Minnesota.
Okay, gotcha.
Um, John Deere. I don't know why I like John Deere. I think that's a good golf course. It's fun to play. Um, but then there's also golf courses where you're like, man, I know that I can be successful at this golf course. I just haven't been yet, you know? And there's some golf courses that you just know, man, you know what? That's a tough golf course. Doesn't necessarily suit my eye. It's going to be one of those weeks where a good week maybe is top 25. Um, and then there's those golf courses that haven't had a lot of success on that I'm just like, that golf course is so tailor made that you just got to get out of your own way and let it happen, and you're going to have a ton of success there.
Name them and shame them, Roger.
I
Tell me
think
what.
Torrey Pines is one of them. Um,
I got your back on that one. I'll help you there.
yeah. You've had success there. Going through this, what is it? Riviera is another one. Um, just going like periodically through. I think San Antonio is always one on my radar. That's just like I drive the golf ball well. That's one of my strengths. That's a golf course that I can have a good week at. I just never had a good week in San Antonio, but
I
it's like
felt
it's
I
always
felt
one I'm like,
yeah.
man, I just want to.
I felt the same way. I think the wind always pushed me over the edge there because it can get so windy there, and I never handled it well.
Yeah,
But
you are gonna get one day where it can blow 30
yeah,
up there.
yeah, for sure. Uh, how about in how about in Houston?
Houston's been kind of all over the map because when I started, it was at the Golf Club of Houston or Redstone at the time.
Yep.
Now they've shifted it to Memorial. Shockingly, like I haven't gotten into Memorial, nor do they give sponsor exemptions to local guys. So I've only played Memorial once, and I've only played in my 5 years out there. I think I've only played the Houston Open twice.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm really hoping that's one that now that they've changed it to the spring, I'm interested to see what they're going to do to that golf course, whether they're going to overseed it or how they're going to prepare it, what the field's going to be like. It was kind of more of it had a really strong field when it was in the fall recently, wedged in between some of the Masters and some of those elevated events. I don't know what the field's going to be like, so I'm crossing my fingers. I hope I get into it, but um, those hometown events are very similar to like the Canadian Open. You put a little bit more pressure on yourself to perform, and it doesn't really always work out in your favor. So, um, those are the
I
two.
feel that.
That's one thing with the Canadian Open. Now that a Canadian has won the Canadian Open, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to allow a lot of the Canadians to play a whole lot better. I,
I think so too. I think the floodgates kind of, we had some near misses, guys who played well.
yeah,
Shoot, the best finishes were either amateurs or guys who weren't even on the PGA Tour yet. Adam Hadwin, Jared Dutois,
yeah.
like those were kind of the best finishes besides Weir all
I
those
know
years
Jared
ago.
says that he's like, I didn't know what I was in. I had no idea what
Yeah,
how big it was until after.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. Which is funny. How could you not being out there all week? Like he's front and center
Yeah.
for 72 holes. But I think you're right. That'll kind of it breaks the seal, and I think it just eases guys' minds. Like, hey, this can be done. It's not that big a deal, even though it is. But
It
it
is a
just
big deal for sure, but you're not answering those questions. Well, is this the
yes,
year that a Canadian wins? It's
yeah,
like, okay, that's done with now, and now you know what? I can just focus on the golf a little bit.
yeah.
And I mean, it's only a matter. You're going to see more Canadians win. These Canadians are playing so well right now, and I think this is probably a little bit too candid, but I think the obligations that the Canadians have during the Canadian Open week are just a little bit too strenuous on them.
I was never that big of a deal, so I didn't have to do any of those. But I could see the top ranked guys get pulled in
Yeah,
multiple directions.
exactly. They have
I
a
was
lot
just
of
kind of the add
obligations.
on at the end. Um, I think it's a good idea next year if you maintain the same attitude of staying out of the politics of everything, because you're going to a PGA Tour that's vastly different than the one that you played on a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, it's funny. My stance on all of that has been I've just ignored it. Everyone always asks me what's your take on the lit? What's your take on this and that? I'm like, I don't really care. Like, tell me where I play and when I play, and I take a stance too. I'm very thankful to be on the PGA Tour. Very thankful. There's a lot of guys that moved on that were just they got greedy. Like,
Yeah.
who's Patrick Reed? Who's Bubba Watson without the PGA Tour? They're nobody. Yet somehow they think that they are somebody that's entitled to something, and they're so, and I'm like, well, hold on a second. You are who you are. Your name is who you are because of the PGA Tour. Like that, I think, and that's not to give the PGA Tour, the PGA Tour does still need to have the accountability to further and better its product for sure. And we can get into this whole argument and all that, but my stance has always been like, just ignore it, let it go. Like when the Canadian Open this past year, we had that player meeting, right? They had just
Mm,
announced
yep.
the PIF or whatever, and the partnership with the PIF, and everyone's like, man, what? Can't I wish I was in that meeting. Like, let us know, or take a video, or take a pic, or whatnot. And I was like, I'm not going. Like, I have no desire to go. Like, what's going to be accomplished? People are just going to start yelling, and the PGA Tour is not actually going to tell you what's going on. It can't. It's an entity that can't really give you the full scope of what's going on. That's how organizations work. So there's no benefit to being in there and elevating your heart rate, and it's just I'll let them do that and let me do my thing, right?
Yeah, I was always, and I'll yell it from the rooftops. Like, the PGA Tour is an amazing place to play. It was awesome.
Hmm.
There was nothing better at the time. There's probably still nothing better now. And for guys to kind of act like you said, they're entitled to something more. I don't quite get that. The tour, like, tour golf is the aggregation of everybody together. Like, one person, besides one guy,
Yeah,
um, it, it doesn't matter who they are, right? Like, you don't have pro hockey wouldn't exist if it was just Connor McDavid. It has to be everybody. The
yeah.
NHL has to be 32 teams of 20 guys.
You need
It
third
can't be
liners
just
and fourth liners to
yeah,
have an
it can't
NHL
just be
product.
one guy. And I understand the focus isn't on the third and fourth liners, but they still have to be there.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
guarantee you that they are super thankful to be there. Like, I'll
Oh, yeah.
just over and over, like, it was awesome. PGA Tour was awesome to be on. I wish I was there longer. So I think you take that attitude going into next year, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself in some big events and
Yeah.
just keep going
That's
and
the thing.
going.
I mean, I'm very thankful. Very thankful, and it's a good time to be on the PGA Tour. They're making some pretty good progress. They got a very good product, and I think it's only going to get better.
Roger, what's kind of the biggest change you're going to bring this year onto the tour, knowing that the last year you were out there, you sort of there was kind of a lot going on, right? And um, not making any excuses, but it wasn't your best year out there, and it sounds like you regrouped really well, and obviously you were super patient. You let things come to you. You played really well. Man, I was so impressed with your finish in Indiana because that up and down was a big deal. And to know that it was hard to tell when you're watching to know how much you knew. Just like to hit that pitch shot, like that was tricky, man. That was like a tight lie. You had to land it in a certain spot, and you hit a good shot. It wasn't like a great shot, and then you gave yourself this putt, and you poured it in. Like as soon as it left the putter, it was in. And there was, like you said, there was a calm to it. There was a bit of a maturation that you kind of walked us through there. So what are you kind of taking? What's kind of that big change from knowing the start of the PGA Tour season, 2 years ago, where you ended up at the end of the year, losing your card and having to regroup. What are you going to take out there this coming year that's different?
Well, I mean, those boys are in for a real treat because I got a Canadian caddy now. So, I mean,
Uh-oh.
we're just full bore ahead. And he's a Flames fan. So I mean, those guys don't stand a chance.
Anybody I know, Roger?
Todd Clarkson. I don't know if you.
I don't know the name. Okay.
Yeah, he's bounced around the European tour for a little bit. He was caddying for Hank Lebiota.
Okay.
Came out here, and then he was bouncing around. Didn't have anybody, and he's been a really, really good fit for me. It's funny to watch my maturation or the process of a caddy over the years too. You come out as a young kid, and it's like you have all these expectations of what a caddy needs to be. It needs to be like bones and telling me where to go and how to do this and do that. Well, I'm a very one of my strengths is thinking through a golf course. Like course management is my strength. I don't need somebody telling me how to manage a golf course. I can figure that out myself. So I don't need that. I'm a very good greens reader, so I don't need somebody to read greens for me. And so over the years, my expectations of what I require out of a caddy have completely shifted. And so now Todd, who's he's been in some big tournaments, big pressure situations. It's really just somebody out there to clean the clubs, and he does a little bit of wind for me, and that's really essentially all I need. And he keeps things light, and that's what I've always needed. Sometimes I get a little bit too serious. I can get a little bit too much in my head. And, he's just a constant reminder of, hey, this is just golf. There'll be a situation where he's like, hey, we'll be in the 14th fairway. He's like, hey, Raj, I got some notes on this hole. And he'll open up his yardage book and he'll look at it, and it says, you are dumb. Or it's just the most outlandish, stupidest, just to give yourself a laugh, right? Just to be like, this is just a game. Like, we don't need to take it so seriously, or I hate you, or whatever he says on these little notes. It's comic relief. Just
And
light.
how long have you been working with him?
I started working with him a week or two before the Canadian Open this year.
Okay.
He's been instrumental in just helping me, just another piece to the puzzle that just really fits in, and I'm in a really good place with that. I think, to be more specific in answering your question, that putt that I drained on 18 at Evansville, there was a calmness about it. There's certain things that attributed to that calmness. We talk about the amount, the scope, the magnitude of the pressure of the situation. It really just lends itself to the only thing that you can control is the simplicity of it. It's just, I can't control whether this goes in. I can't control what other guys do or where I finish on the leaderboard. It just comes down to make a good read, feel the putt you want to hit, and hit it. I hadn't hit a good putt the entire back nine. I'd missed every single putt, and I had been putting good all week, and I was just hitting some poor putts that back nine, and I was just chuckling to myself. I'm like, this would happen. I need to make an 8-footer now, and I haven't hit a good putt in 2 hours. And I did. I said a little prayer. It was just like, hey, just give me the calmness to just put a good roll on it. That's all I want. Just put a good roll on it. And just standing over it, I put a good read on it. I was confident in the read, and I put a really good stroke on it. And as soon as I hit it, I knew it was in. And I knew that when I hit it, I just knew. I knew that I needed to make that putt. And when it went in, there's maybe a clip of me walking around a little bit, but it was just, I was so overjoyed in the self-satisfaction that I hit that putt. It was greater than going back to the PGA Tour. Going back to the PGA Tour is cool. It didn't matter to me in that moment whether I play next season on the Korn Ferry Tour or whether I played on the PGA Tour. I'm good enough. I'm going to get back to the PGA Tour at some point. But the self-satisfaction I got out of hitting that putt when I needed it most, You can never take that away from me.
That's
And
cool.
just to be able to rely on that going forward next year is going to be a pretty cool thing. Because when I put my mind to it, when I'm focused on the right thing, your attention is where it should be. I'm a pretty good golfer, so I'm excited to continue to work on that.
Yeah, there is a very deep sense of satisfaction when it's like, well, I either have to do this or I go back, to where ultimately I don't want to be next year, and you end up making the putt. You are indeed headed back to the PGA Tour, Roger Sloan. We can't wait to watch you each and every week. It's been a treat for us to talk to you. Much appreciated. Are you going to grow your hair out a little bit for January, or are you going to
I don't
keep it
know. I
kind of
kind of
high
like
and
the
tight?
new look.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things too. If you got it, you got it. I mean, you feel like if you got the nice hair, you kind of got to grow it, right?
You have the potential. I definitely agree with that.
Roger, I have one more question for you. One more question.
Yeah.
This is just this is pure Red Rooster uh, golf, but I'm just the backstory with Brad and I. We played junior golf together, and we got caught up in this boys trip a couple years ago where Brad's fully stocked with gloves, and I'm using an old one from the previous year, just a bit of a cheapskate. But just walk us through, like, what is I noticed that day on that pitch shot you're wearing the Titleist player's glove, and what are your glove habits? Like, how do do you wear a glove for a round or two, and what just it's helpful, I think, for our audience to hear, like, what a PGA Tour player values in gloves, and how you use them, and how you handle them, and what your kind of expectations are.
So I grew up on a 9-hole golf course. Not a lot of money, and some of those same habits still exist. Like we get as many gloves as we need. We get as many golf balls as we need, and I'm still the guy that will play with one golf ball for 18 holes. I mean, unless it is truly, truly damaged or has been scuffed by a tree or a cart path, or we've hit too many wedge shots. I mean, I will. I'll play the ball out. With the gloves, it's the same thing. It's like I will play the glove until it's too loose, or the holes are starting to come in. I mean, it's ingrained in me, right? Like a lot of guys might go through one or two gloves in a round. I With that being said, I probably go through two gloves in a week.
Okay.
Um, and that's just because you're hitting so many shots and that leather starts to stretch a little bit, and it's not, it's a little bit loose. So put on something tight. But I'm not, I think that small town kid in me still exists, where I'm trying to play as many holes on a golf ball as possible and try to get as many holes in with a glove as I possibly can.
But it's great. I mean, like, we often say, we did build our gloves to be a little bit more durable,
Mhm.
but, put Brad in that camp. It's probably like, a round or two with a glove, and you're feeling somewhat guilty sort of holding on to them. That's the reality, especially with like the player's glove. And we do have one tournament glove called the Sussex, and, it is a thinner, softer glove. They don't last more than a couple rounds,
Yeah,
especially when
I
they get
think like
stretched out.
there's just so much feel involved with it, and there's routine too. And putting on a glove, and then if you're having to like stretch it too much, it's a different routine. So it's like, okay, I got to get rid of that one, because that leather, it does stretch a little bit. Obviously, whatever weather that you're playing in has a significance too. If you're playing in a dry climate, that glove's not going to last as long. It's going to dry up and get holes in it pretty quick. And then if you're playing in a really humid climate, you're putting the glove on, but then you're having to stretch the fingers just to get it off your sweaty hands. So then you put it on, and your finger, you get that
Yeah,
pinky finger that sticks out to here.
that's the Puerto Rico glove, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Always.
in those weeks you might go through 3 or 4 gloves, but it's such a feel thing, right? You want your hand to just feel like it's not wearing anything, and as soon as your hand feels the glove, gone.
Yeah, I was the same way with golf balls, Roger. I would see guys change after every birdie.
Yeah.
They'd switch out. They'd use 6 or 7 balls around. I'm like, this ball's totally fine. I'm going to use it again.
Yeah, and
So,
then my mentality is like the Titleist guys or the golf ball guys sit there and they say, "Yeah, that's scuff, that'll affect it." I'm sitting going, "I'm not that good to make that. What is that? Half a yard? I mean, I'm not that accurate. Like, come on."
that's funny. Roger, man, we appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you for taking the time out of your day to join us. We wish you all the best on the PGA Tour in 2024, and we will be watching. Good luck to you.
thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.
All right,
Thanks,
man.
Roger. Appreciate it. Enjoy your downtime.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh yeah, definitely will.
So that was Roger Sloan. I've known him for a long time. Not super well. Like he and I will have some meals at events over the last, 6, 7, 8 years, but we never really hung out. It was just like, mutual respect, Canadian golfer type thing. Um, he's always been kind of a guy who keeps to himself, wonderful player, and his career has extended out way farther than mine. But he was kind of the same deal, like learn a little bit, have to drop down a level, then get back to where he was, and then go farther. So he's quite the I'd say he's a student of the game because, like you said, or like he said, his his junior career was not good, amateur, college. So he's fashioned a wonderful career in professional golf for someone who thinks that he didn't have much of anything going on into his what, early 20s.
Yeah, amazing. Like I don't remember him kind of being one of those. You see most of the guys that especially the top Canadian guys, they were pretty heralded juniors and college players,
Yes.
and so it was interesting. I just didn't remember that, and he kind of corroborated that. But he has this sort of quiet confidence, right? What do you like about his game? Have you ever played with him in a tournament, or you've
Yeah,
obviously
yeah, yeah. We've
seen him out
played.
there? What is
We've
it that Roger does really well?
we've played quite a bit together. He drives it really straight. He doesn't
Okay,
have, except for the ninth hole at the Wyndham, he doesn't have the foul ball in him. Like he just doesn't hit it offline that often. And he's a really good wedge player. And I think that's probably to do with his tempo. Like his hands are super soft. His tempo just so good.
yeah,
And he has wonderful hair. And I wish we had gotten him
that's
to take off
huge
his
for.
hat because he had a pretty good mop underneath. He's got high and tight right now on the sides and back, but he's got quite the mop underneath.
Yeah, he's had PGA Tour caliber hair for years.
Oh yeah, probably out of the womb, most likely. Um, but yeah, his I think one thing that just sticks out to me with him is his tempo. It never feels rushed. It's never super fast in transition from backswing to downswing. Um, and he's worked at it, man. Like we talked about, he's gone back and forth from Korn Ferry Tour to PGA Tours. Had a couple lean years on the PGA Tour. I was looking up his stats, and he played 20 events, make 7 cuts, make a couple 100,000, which in reality is around 180th, 190th on the points list, and that drags a guy down. Like mentally, it's hard to deal with that, to recover from that. So doing that last year and then having the year that he did this year on the Korn Ferry Tour, full credit. It's awesome. And another Canadian on the PGA Tour, which is great. Like he said, it's never been stronger, and guys are not only competing to keep their card, they're winning events now. So um, just another Canadian out there, and it's great to see.
Yeah, it'd be neat to see. He's got the new caddy, kind of new attitude, but I've always seen him as a bit of a streaky player. Like when he could go low, you would see these. He's been in. Um, he'll get those top tens. It seemed like he could miss a few cuts and then he could be competing for the tournament. And he seemed to have this ability to go low, and then to hear his mindset to be so conservative, to be almost like you let those rounds come to you. That's it's interesting and it's helpful because you do often think a guy can win a Corn Ferry event shooting 23 under, hitting fairways and greens. You don't think that. You think maybe that's that mentality of like, you got to get out here and it's a birdie fest and I got to shoot at every pin. And
Yeah, especially not that week, right? You
right.
you could expect it the final couple weeks on those tough golf courses that he talked about. Um, but I do think that he's well positioned. Like he's learned a lot about himself and his game, and I think Kevin Kisner said it once. It's a great quote. He said, "They pay a lot of money for 20th out here." But learning that is tough. I remember my first year, I made a ton of cuts, 19 out of 25. But on the weekends, I was so gung ho about making birdies and shooting 4 and 5 under par that I forgot to shoot 1 under. And instead, I shot 1 or 2 over. And consequently, I had a ton of 55ths, 60th, and those don't pay very much, relatively speaking. But it's a learned trait out on the PGA Tour that 20th is okay. You make almost 6 figures, you get a ton of FedEx Cup points, and those are the ways that you're not treading water. You're moving up in the points standings, and trying to get to that, the playoffs, the Tour Championship, all that stuff. So I think he's figured that part out. He probably did a couple years ago, but again, it's hard to go through that first or second year on tour. You just don't think like that. Unfortunately, that's what playing the Korn Ferry Tour does to a guy. Thinking if you don't shoot 5 under, you're getting lapped. And on the PGA Tour, most weeks it's not like that.
Right. Yeah. Great point.
Yeah. So good on him for joining us. It went on way longer than I thought it would. It's awesome. It's probably our longest interview yet, and it's timely too. I love having guys right fresh off a great week and headed back to the PGA Tour. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, a fascinating guy. Could definitely be. Always been rooting for him, but it's interesting to chat with him and hear his mindset and see how things play out this year. Like he got a bit of that reset, and you get down to the Korn Ferry and actually appreciate being down there, and you can be down there a couple years, and it can be beyond your control. You can be down there for a few years playing well. Kind of got lightning in a bottle that 1 week, and then did what he had to do in the last week, and bang, he's getting the upgrade. And it'll be interesting to see with that mindset how he plays next year.
Yeah, like in most sports, if you're there or have the ability to get there, the rest is just attitude. And it sounds like he's got the right one.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for us at the Red Rooster Golf Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. For my partner, Carrie Moher, I am Brad Fritsch. We'll see you again soon. Until then, tee it high, let it fly, and cock-a-doodle-doo.